on earth as it is in heaven. It's a phrase that is found in what we refer to as the Lord's Prayer. Remember that time when Jesus' disciple asked him, Lord, teach us to pray? Jesus then began this model prayer by saying, Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. There it is. That phrase is specifically referring to God's will. Now, can you imagine what our world would look like if God's will would be done on earth as it is in heaven? This devotional time does not allow us to answer this extremely broad question. So let's focus on answering one area. You guessed it, worship. Corporate worship, to be exact. How would our worship gatherings look like if God's will would be accomplished on earth as it is in heaven? As a worship pastor and worshiper, I often reflect on what heavenly worship looks like. The Bible has given us a picture throughout the book of Revelation. I regularly revisit those passages where the participants so vividly engage themselves in this glorious exercise of worshiping God and the Lamb who sits on the throne. I often ask myself this question: what impedes us from praising God in our worship services like the book of Revelation describes? I know what you might be thinking. Earth to Daniel. We're still here on earth in our sinful state, which deceive us to think that our way is better than heaven's way. We often come to worship concerned about our preferences, what's going on in my life. We might be tired or bored with what we believe life has thrown at us. A plethora of distractions that rob us from experiencing communion with God in the way that one day we will experience that in heaven. I believe one way we can begin to get a taste of heavenly worship is by placing our complete focus on God every time we come to a worship service. As I read throughout those corporate worship passages in the book of Revelation, one thing I find in common: every participant or character in the heavenly worship drama, whether the 4 living creatures, the 24 elders who are supposed to be sitting around the throne, but they're prostrating before the throne, or the many angels, which the Bible specifies that they were myriads of myriads and thousands of thousands, they all are focused on the one who sits on the throne. In chapter 7, verse 9 and 10, we find a great multitude that no one could number from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed in white robes with palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice, "Salvation belongs to our God who sits on the throne and to the Lamb." Can you imagine what that is going to be like? I'm not sure about you, but I have gotten a taste of heavenly worship in my lifetime. I am reminded of a Promise Keeper event back in the late 90s when 40,000 men at Bulldog Stadium in Fresno, California, were singing at sunrise, "Holy, holy, holy, Lord God Almighty. Early in the morning my song shall rise to thee." I have had other times as I have led worship at different services, events, or at conferences. Sadly, it does not happen as often as I would like. Many times because my focus is wrongly placed. My worries, my concerns, my sin, you fill in the blank. Oh, how I would love to have more of that heavenly worship while on earth. And we can, as we gather on the Lord's Day and focus our hearts and minds on God, not ourselves, not preoccupied or distracted by life circumstances, but anticipating our time in His presence. So my encouragement to you is quite simple and clear. Next time when you and I attend any worship gathering, let us intentionally come with that resolve to focus our whole selves on God, the author and perfecter of our salvation. Then as we bask on God's goodness and faithfulness, we will yearn more fervently that glorious day when we will be worshiping in His presence forever.